morning. Whoa, that's loud. I would like to call this meeting to order. Christine, would you please call roll?
Mary Ellen Early? Here. Ray Hernandez?
Here.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Sam Kabusha?
Here.
Michael Terry?
Here.
Vice President Goldstein?
Here.
President Guzman?
Here.
And Cheryl Williams let us know in advance that she would not be here for today's meeting.
Excellent, thank you. Quorum is present. I would like to ask everyone to please turn your cell phones to silent. This is an official business meeting of the Respiratory Care Board. You may notice board members accessing their laptops, phones, or other devices during the meeting. They're using the devices solely to access the board meeting materials that are in electronic format. Public comment will be allowed on each agenda item as each item is taken up by the board during the meeting. Under the Open Meetings Act, the board may not take any action on items raised by public comment that are not on the agenda, other than to decide whether to schedule that item for a future meeting. If you would like to provide a comment, it would be appreciated, although not required, if you would provide your name and the organization you represent, if applicable, prior to speaking. To allow the board sufficient time to conduct its scheduled business, public comment may be limited. The board welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comment prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. If for some reason I forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item and you wish to speak on that item, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. Are there any public comments at this time? Okay, seeing none. Let's move on to agenda item number 2.
I move to approve the meeting minutes from the Thursday, June 9th, 2022 meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis.
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Any public comments at this time? Seeing none. Christine, would you please perform the roll call vote?
Yes. Mary Ellen Early? Aye. Ray Hernandez?
Aye.
Dr. Lewis?
Aye.
Sam Kabusha?
Aye.
Michael Terry?
Aye.
Vice President Goldstein?
Aye.
And President Guzman?
Aye. Moving on to item number 3, fiscal report. Christine, would you please guide us through this item?
Sure. As reflected on the fiscal report included in your materials, last fiscal year, our revenues exceeded expenditures by approximately $450,000, resulting in 5.5 months in reserve. We also project revenues to exceed expenditures again this current fiscal year, with an estimate of 5.9 months in reserve come June 30th. This really is an ideal fund condition. Even our statute requires that we try to keep it at about 6 months. But I do want to point out, like, be the negative one, but that there is always a possibility that expenditures will increase as salaries rise. And it generally has a trickle-down effect, since salary increases also affect other expenditures, such as pro rata costs and even AG rates sometimes. In addition, we are all aware of the current rise in inflation, and that brings about even greater concerns regarding potential expenditure increases in our overall operating expenses. We definitely take these possibilities into consideration when we're calculating our projections, and Stephanie and I continually strive to identify areas where we can achieve savings, including by way of attrition. We've talked, I know, about the succession planning and the upcoming retirements. So we already are looking at ways to modify processes to possibly keep some positions vacant as a means of salary savings. Now, positive side of that, in the event expenditures do remain fairly steady, the current fund could provide flexibility should the board wish to pursue a special project, such as when it pursues the workforce studies and things of those nature in the past. So overall, we remain optimistic that a fee increase will not be needed again for at least a decade.
Excellent.
So unless you have questions?
Thank you, Christine. Any questions?
Christine, thank you. I have a question about those employees in bargaining unit. Oh.
Just push on the, yep.
Hello? So, Okay?
Oh,
There we go.
hello? Yes, I have a question about the, those employees in bargaining units, and are any of them up for bargaining at the table, which might potentially increase costs for salaries?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Most of the bigger contracts expired this year, so they will be renegotiated next spring. And so at that time, we'll know probably, usually contracts go anywhere from 2 to 3 years out. So then we'll know what kind of an impact we're looking at in the future, if there's pay raises.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, I have one.
More, sorry. We always have talked for the last several years about pro rata. And again, I'm trying to wrap my head around pro rata and why it costs so much. And I assume that's part of the general fund? Or if you could explain it?
It is not part of the general fund.
Good.
Pro rata services, there's two different types of services we pay. We pay for services that are internal within the Department of Consumer Affairs, and it ranges from a variety of, like even legal services, business services, IT services, accounting, you name it, any of the operations. We have individuals that assist us with those functions. We also pay an outside pro rata that is for the same type of thing, but it's for what are identified as control agencies, so State Personnel Board, CalPERS, some of the agencies who really only do business for the state of California, State Controller's Office, et cetera. Those costs are generally driven by salaries because the individuals who are in those positions that are providing those services to us, that is how their salaries are funded. So it has to do with how many personnel we have, as well as how many personnel are charged with serving us. If that helps.
Yes, it
Okay.
does. It's just a big,
It is significant,
Amount.
that's correct, it is. And we really don't have any control, say-so. It's just an amount that is provided to us that is based on a certain calculation.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Rick?
So just one, in terms of the fund condition, and we talked about the reserves, and the target is about 6 months, right? So looks like our projection to 24, 25 is just about there as we move forward there. You mentioned, the use of the reserves or the extra funds for projects, and I know yesterday we just performed our strategic plan. And I can already foresee some conversations that would, require some extra budget and funding for that. Being new to the board 2 years, I don't know if that's new anymore. How do we go about that conversation of looking at what the budget is and targeting the 6 months? And let's assume we're under the 6 months. What is that process? Just to understand that a little more.
Well, first, I think we need to wait until the bargaining units do talk and confer. Once that comes out, we can do some projections on where we're at. So really, it's just a matter of if you want to specifically look at this. I think next year at this time would be the perfect time to be determining what kind of money we have left over to maybe put towards something like that. Because then we really can get good projections after those bargaining units are done.
And that's a good timeline just to understand, especially as we're looking at the strategic plan being reviewed and then being finally
Yeah.
approved, I think. Okay, good, thanks.
Any other questions for the members? Any public comment at this time regarding this item? Seeing none, we'll move forward with item number 4. This is the licensing and enforcement activity annual report. Christine, would you please take us through that?
Yes. I'm sure you had an opportunity to look at the attachment for agenda item 4. And I just wanted to point out that while the statistics remained consistent with prior year reporting, One change you may have noticed is we are now being asked to report a few probation stats, specifically the number of probations completed, probationers pending, and the number of subsequent disciplinary actions taken. As it relates to licensing, initial application numbers are remaining steady at about 1,600, and we do continue to see quite a few out-of-state applicants. That has been the trend since COVID, and we've continued to see that up to even recent months. The number of renewals has also remained consistent at just under 10,000 per fiscal year. We do continue to closely monitor monthly license status reports to identify any trends, increases, or decreases in the number of current, inactive, delinquent, retired, and canceled licenses. Recent numbers have remained relatively steady, demonstrating that the number of new licensees is staying consistent with practitioners leaving the profession, either by way of retiring or allowing their license to cancel. In fact, there's even some indication that the number of active licensees is slightly trending upward, so that's a very good sign. Also, just wanted to point out and highlight that our enforcement timeframes they all remain well within our established performance measure targets. And then I also wanted to share that the Department of Consumer Affairs is in the process of creating a data governance committee to establish consistency and standardization of reporting definitions and data among sunset, annual report, and performance measure reporting. So you'll probably hear more about that and may even see some format changes in the near future. And just to kind of point out one example, they're looking at coming up with like clear definitions, and I will tell you, like, I had to kind of do a double take when it said probationers pending. What they really mean is how many are actively on probation at the end of the fiscal year, but someone may take probationers pending as cases that that we're adjudicating and getting ready to place on probation. So I think that's a good example of why maybe the definitions need some updating. And I think that's it, unless anyone has questions about a specific statistic.
Anyone has a question for the board? Any public comments at this time? All right, seeing none, thank you, Christine.
You're welcome.
We will move on to item number 5. This is our Professional Qualifications Committee update. Strategic Plan Goal number 2, to incorporate baccalaureate degree provision in the Respiratory Care Practice Act. I will turn it over at this point to Raymond Hernandez and Michael Terry for their update regarding this item.
Thank you, President Guzman. So in the board packet, you'll see that Michael Terry and I, who head up the Professional Qualifications Committee, I just want to provide you an update at this point from where we've been to where we are now. And again, framing this in the strategic plan from 2017 in terms of plan goal number 2, and in terms of looking at our current education qualifications for licensure, where we are and where we might need to go. And so we've had thus far 3 study sessions that we brought before the board. And at this time, based on the last study session we had, we discussed the different models that may have come up based on the explorative information that we had shared at that time, and we wanted to give you the summary of that. So Michael and I, with support from the executive office, we discussed all the information, and we've come up with some next steps that we'd like to move forward with. At the time, we looked at different models. You'll see that the possible models for exploration are listed in the second area, and those are a list of what we brought to the table we've discussed, and possibly others that we may not have discussed as we move forward, but they're there before you, looking at anywhere from maintaining what we currently have to some different explorations and models that we'll bring before the board. In order to do that at this time, our next step is now to look at doing some focus groups and inviting discipline experts to the table for those discussions via the Professional Qualifications Committee. We vetted how that would look, what we could do per the board. And so we'll be inviting folks based on just discussions that we're going to have. And if you look at the third category, you'll see the discipline expertise areas. And so we have approximately 2, 4, 6 different expertise areas that we will be inviting at different times based on the conversations. And so you can see in each of those, we look at representative groups, and right now we're defining who those people would be. Because what we'd like to do is really get people who are experts in the community, leaders in the community, have been actively engaged and involved in that community. So between Michael and I, we have been contacting those individuals. We pretty much have that list almost vetted, and then we'll start the work over the next few months of having those people come to us. We'll engage in the conversations and get feedback, and then bring that feedback back to the next board meeting. So that's our next step, with the intention of, once we perform that process, we'll bring it back to the board for conversation. And then once that conversation has happened, then we'd also like to bring a survey back that we would actually open up to all of the stakeholders for feedback before defining and bringing final recommendations to this board. The other piece I want to put into context is the board has done this work previously back in 2000, when they were exploring the associate degree as the minimum qualifications, and even before COARC mandated that associate degree as the minimum. So just to say, this isn't new. We're going through the same iterative process to get to a decision that certainly is going to provide competent care in the state of California as respiratory care practitioners, and provide a threshold for safety of the public. Michael, is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay.
Covered it just fine, thank you.
So any questions or comments from the board just in terms of the next steps?
I have a comment. I would really like to see in the areas that you're looking at, that you would incorporate home care, which is a major area of possible growth. And it is an area that in which, as people move from the hospitals and all the areas that you've mentioned within the hospitals, they're actually going out and making sure that people don't end up in the hospitals. That's a major
we'll
growth
make
area
sure.
for the profession.
And we'll make sure to do that. And so, you know, our examples in parentheses under employer representation and specialty areas, they're not exhaustive, but we tried to hit the main points. But your point is well taken. Home care is a large employment area and service area.
May I have another question related to the residency. And so prior to license award for this particular candidate, let's say, what is the residency looking like versus other, similar practices in different sort of areas? What was the approximate time someone would do the residency?
So I'll take this list here of possible exploration. We don't know the details of any of these yet. We did have a conversation about a residency component that actually came from Dr. Lewis, just in terms of our conversations. And it seems like something to explore. So how long, when it would happen, what would the conditions be? This list does not have any of those for any of these elements. Michael, did you want to add something there?
I just want to say that that's part of what we're going to ask our experts about, to help us to understand how to form that.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the members? Any public comments on this item? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ray and Michael, for the excellent work that you continue to do in this item, in this project. Thank you for the update. And at this point, we can move forward with item number 6, which are our legislations of interest. And Christine, would you take us through that?
Yes. Again, your meeting materials include updates for the bills that the board previously adopted positions. As reflected on the report, many of the bills we were watching were unsuccessful this year. Fortunately, SB 1436, our sunset bill, received unanimous support by both the Senate and Assembly and was signed by the governor on September the 27th. In addition to extending the board's inoperative date to January 1, 2027, it also added categories or types of employment that would be subject to mandatory reporting for violations already defined in law. Addressed issues with the unqualified practice of respiratory care by licensed vocational nurses, and it authorized the board to provide a temporary rapid response beneficial to consumers during a state of emergency. As it relates to the LVN issue, SB 1436 added new language to the Vocational Nurse Practice Act and our Practice Act, allowing the board to, among other things, develop definitions for basic respiratory tasks. You'll hear more about this when we discuss item 8, when it's presented coming up here. In the coming year, we also plan to hold meetings to address tasks and services related to home care. We discussed that briefly yesterday as part of the strategic planning efforts. The other bills that were signed by the governor that the board was watching was the AB 1604, the Upward Mobility Act of 2022, which calls for boards and committee appointments to include at least one member from an underrepresented community. AB 1914, which provides that a licensed healthcare practitioner acting as a resource family member, so in the foster care system, is not required to complete or show proof of completing CPR or basic life support. And finally, SB 1237, which defines the phrase call to active duty for purposes of waiving fees for military service members. And you will probably recall that bill originally had an opposed position, but we changed it to watch based on amendments that essentially made it in line with what our existing process is for waiving fees for military members called to active duty. And that's it, unless anyone has questions.
Thank you, Christine. Questions? Comments? Any comments from the public at this point? Yes. Please come up.
Good morning, I'm Michael De Peralta. Any of the views and opinions that I express are of my own and not any of my affiliation. Public comment that I have is for the SB 1237 and giving the military some sort of waiver or decrease fees for active duty folks who are called into active duty service or currently active duty. Would like the public to know and the board member to know that how important this is, especially was very highlighted during the COVID-19 pandemic and the response to the state of California. For many years, and I think historically, we haven't, the military have not deployed active duty service into any states, and this has happened to assist, most especially state of California during the COVID-19 pandemic. The FEMA, together with different military services, has responded to the call, and to the Californians to provide services. Again, this is not affiliated with the DOD or any FEMA, but from what I gathered from some members is that they had problems during the response to COVID pandemic. They were not able to deploy in a timely manner because hospitals do require a respiratory care practitioner license in the state of California to perform respiratory care services. Now they were able to deploy active duty folks, but they're not performing respiratory care practice because it's not allowed in the state of California. Now, this could have saved a lot of Californians. This could have helped more California RCPs and the hospitals in the battle of COVID-19 pandemic, but this has been one of the hindrance during the pandemic is I'm a RRT or CRT, but I'm not licensed in the state of California, therefore I cannot help. The patients do breathe, but what I can help is whatever I can help with assigned to me by the military. So I just want the board to know that this is an important bill for the military or for anybody who's going to be called into active service. And I hope that we can watch this more closely and this will benefit the state of California and Californians. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for your comments. Any other comments from the public? All right, seeing none, we can go ahead and move on to item number 7. Stephanie, would you guide us through this item?
This is the CE regulation package. As you know, we've been working on this for several years. As mentioned yesterday, it went out for massive public comment a couple of years ago. COVID happened, but we did respond to those comments that we initially received, and we thought that we had met a lot of the concerns. And so when we came back this time, the language was changed and reorganized. So it may have appeared to the public that it was new, or maybe it just caught some people's attention, but it didn't go back out for that pre-comment that we like to do. We just went straight into the rulemaking process and allowed people to comment, and we got a lot of comments back. And part of the rulemaking process is that we need to go through each and every comment and either accept or reject the comment and kind of explain if we're rejecting the comment, give a little bit of an explanation as to why we're doing that. Once this process is through, the plan is to take whatever comments you approve for us to change, to allow me, along with our legal counsel, to modify the text, go ahead and send it out for comment again, but then come back at our next board meeting with the text that we ultimately drafted to make sure that is what you intended, but we think we can implement what you intend, and any comments, and then continue the rulemaking process. That's the goal. But with that said, there were a lot of valid comments made that really do require each of your considerations on that. So, and don't think I've forgotten anything here. So we are going to go through these. Right now I'm on the cover, this cover page that was our attachment, and I'm on page number 4. On this page are amendments that were drafted in the early stages that we knew we were going to need before we got a ton of comments. So in this section, you find comments that were done between me and legal staff. A lot of them are non-substantive, and those are the ones we're going to address at this moment right now. So I'm going to hit all the comments in here that are not highlighted in blue. These are non-substantive comments. And at the end of every one of these, I think I just need, how do they vote on that? We don't have to vote right now. We can just say, get a general consensus right now, and at the end, I'll go back through each comment and make them vote on each one.
You can do it that way.
Okay.
If you want, just take one public comment
Okay,
towards that time.
okay. Okay, so we'll start with non-substantive comments. The first one is to replace the word must with shall throughout the text to provide consistency and preferred legal verbiage. Are there any objections to that? Okay. Number 2, on section 1399.350A, paragraph 1, replace subsection with subdivision to provide consistency and correct legal verbiage. Any objections? Okay. Number 4, section 1399.350E, replace subdivision B with K to correct the citation and add as provided in subdivision L of section 1399.352 to provide clarity and consistency in cited references. I'm going to, if you have an objection, please speak up, board members. Number 5, section 1399.352K, add comma after the course as provided in section 1399.351 to provide proper punctuation. Number 6, section 1399.352.5 subdivision A, replace subdivision H with subdivision H or I to correctly cite all CE providers designating CE hours. Number 8, section 1399.352.6 subdivision B, subdivision 2, delete respiratory care practitioner, RCP, and replace with RCP to provide consistency. And finally, number 12, section 1399.352.7, throughout this section, replace post-examination with post-course examination to provide clarity. Do we have any objections to those non-substantive amendments? Okay. So now we're going to go to the handout, and I would set this document down and pick up the document that was passed out this morning. Because what I did is took the comments that were listed and placed them by topic. Did you have some for the audience? Okay. So we put them in, grouped them by topic instead, so we could get through this hopefully more consistently. So the first topic that comes up is in response to section 1399.350A. No, this is not part of the online.
You're on,
You have one right here.
you're on the handout, today's handout. Okay,
Okay,
put that away.
sure.
The comments are there,
there's
just
a-
not in this format.
Yeah. Okay, so. This is about the number of hours required. There were a few comments made, and I'm not sure. The first comment made is to clarify, to state a minimum of 20 CE hours. This is comment number 15. I believe the commenter was referencing a document that wasn't the last document. So there is no contradiction. And that's the same with number 16 and 17. Yes. So for those first three comments, I think that was just a reference to a different document. Everything is okay there, so I think we need to reject these comments based on the fact that there is no contradiction.
Should we do that now?
I'm sorry?
Should we do that now?
No, we're gonna go back through this, but now would be the time to point it out if you disagree with that, because at the end, I'm gonna go back through and tell you what we decided on as we've moved through here. Sure. Alex Millington is here today. He is our regulatory legislative counsel, and he and I have been going back and forth on many, many documents. So he's gonna probably chime in on some of these different things as we come up to more legal matters. Okay, still on the CE leadership category, but on the second page here, we are going to comment number 39. This is testimony from the hearing held, comment 39, 40, and 41. I will read them. So comment 39 from Sabato. As far as leadership, we all acknowledge that everyone in the respiratory care profession is a leader. I have issue with the content that the Respiratory Care Board is saying that would qualify as a leadership CEU event. I think you should consider topics such as communication, empathy, emotional intelligence, working as a team. That such content in a CEU would qualify as leadership. I think that would be very helpful and would definitely prepare RTs to enter the field of leadership. I would probably recommend rejecting that because I think we had defined leadership more in response to the workforce study as far as management skills and more technical skills, not, I guess, personal relationships. So, but that's up to the board to decide how they feel about that. And now would be the time to tell me whether you want to reject or accept that comment.
I would like to reject that comment. It really is, as you said, more about management training, et cetera, not interpersonal skills or emotional,
Yeah,
integrity or.
right, okay. Is everybody in agreement with that? Okay.
I'd like to quickly comment. Some of our RCPs that are working at the bedside are not interested in management and not interested in those things, but certainly have to work as team members. And so some of these topics I look at as definitely something I'd like all of my staff to be able to participate in. And I have sympathy with this comment.
I didn't hear the last part, Michael.
I support that we should accept this comment, these categories of instruction as part of leadership.
Can you explain to me where you're speaking of?
It's on the second page, number 39, the first comment on the second page. And I think it's just a matter of, as a regulatory board, are we wanting to build leadership skills that have to do more specifically with respiratory care or management? And there's a ton of interpersonal skills that you could put on here that are personnel related. And I feel like that's not in our purview.
Yeah, it's not the intent of this. It's not in our purview, definitely. Maybe the individual school can develop these skills, but it's not for the RCB to develop them.
So I look at this as us categorizing topics that we feel are CEU worthy. And to me, having a lecture about communication and improving communication is worthy of a CEU for any profession, I feel. And the other subjects I feel are the same. You know, not everybody has those skills or gets those skills necessarily from their family, but it's certainly something we need in the workforce.
Well, I think a communication, yes.
Quick, I mean,
I'm sorry, just really quick, if you could make sure you turn your microphones on. I got word that some of the webcast isn't picking up voices, sorry.
okay, so the question is, Michael, again, going back to C, which I agree on some extent to the fact that, you want to teach, people, some skills that they don't have. But, I mean, my understanding is that doesn't someone who get to that position, going through the ropes of education or higher education or formal education, they go like, for example, back then we had communication classes in community colleges, as well as, the journey you take on that professional skill set. I mean, I still agree, but to what extent you guys are pitching this, to what extent the CE should require like a class perhaps, or a unit, or 3 units, like for the CE, or it's just a course or during the CE?
I would envision that this would be, I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't see your hand up. I would envision that this would be in the form of like lectures or CEU content that you could purchase online that would help to enhance a person's understanding and ability to perform. Not necessarily what you get in school.
So what you're saying, Michael, this is something, I'm sorry, I just want to clarify this. So what you're saying is that this is something like, you would require, or part of the CE is that, the actual candidate has to prove that, or enroll in that specific lecture, or perhaps some sort of a prove that they went through this course. That's what.
Well, what I think is happening is that we are discussing topics that will fit within this category called leadership, of which 5 CEUs per cycle has to be performed by an RCP for renewal. And what I'm saying is not to exclude those other subjects. Those other subjects should be the management and all that should be there. But we should also include these subjects for people who are not necessarily interested in management, but are still need to get CEUs to fulfill that licensing requirement.
All right, thanks for that clarification.
Maybe we're mixing a little bit apples and oranges. It's 10 hours of leadership that's required, but I think what I would like to see avoided are courses that have to be taken by every employee at an institution in the personnel arena. So if there's an incompatible activities, or, sometimes you have to do IT security, those kinds of things, that's not included in our CE. That's already required as part of your condition as employment. And so if you're speaking to something different than that, then I think that's worthy, but I just don't know how, because I think you could have a communication class that's specific to respiratory care.
Mark has a comment.
the way it stands right now.
I would like to support this comment. Communication has been a key issue, and even in leadership, communication is essential, and it is something that the profession has needed and has been at a disadvantage, particularly since the other caregivers at the bedside often have higher education than the RCPs do, and we are lacking at times in
Okay.
being able to communicate, and you can't lead if you can't communicate.
Okay, so there's more than just communication. There's empathy, emotional intelligence, working as a team. In this particular regulation, it specifically lines out what includes in leadership. So do you want all of those 5 things added to this regulation to count as continuing education, or just communication?
I personally would think communication and emotional intelligence would be an integral part of leadership.
Specific to respiratory care or in personnel issues?
Respiratory care.
Does anyone have an objection to that?
Not an objection. I just want to say it's my observation that a lot of these things deal with critical thinking, and some of our surveys have shown that one of the areas that needs to be strengthened among our CPs is the critical thinking. And I wonder if that should be added to the education thing, so that if people take courses that relate to these things they would use as a rank and file practitioner, but come under the category of critical thinking, that it might serve them better. And they don't have to see it as, oh, I'm training to be an educator or a leader.
I have a question.
Okay.
If I may, it's related to this. I just want to clarify. If, for example, at the state convention, someone presented, did a presentation on these items, we would recognize that hour as grant. If they wanted to give a CEU for that presentation, we would recognize that, correct?
A CEU for a communication?
Yeah, so there was, or communication, empathy, emotional intelligence. We wouldn't exclude that
No, I
presentation.
think we would accept it if it could tie to respiratory care.
Just not,
Not
it would just not be
necessarily
tied to
for
leadership.
But it could apply to the others.
Oh, correct. Thank you. Yeah.
President Guzman?
Right?
Thank you. So, so certainly, I think none of us question the development of critical thinking skills, the ability to communicate in various ways, the ability to empathize with our patients. So I think that's a standard, right? As I look at the broad to the specifics, I want to talk first about CEUs in general and then get to the specific in terms of the comment made. So broadly, 30 CEUs every 2 years. Anything that is related to the practice of respiratory care qualifies, period. Right? So that's the justification for this content regardless. As long as it's contextualized in respiratory care, you're good to go, you can submit it. Everybody needs to develop those basic communication, connection with patient skills. They have the opportunity. As we get into the content areas, while I don't disagree with the comment, if we start creating laundry lists for each of these areas, it is going to become very long and unwieldy for people to digest. I'm neutral to the comment, but I would say from a practice of adding to these lists, I'm not in support of that. People have the opportunity to put these categories in their CEUs. Overall, everybody should be developing those basic critical thinking, and communication skills. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
I'd like to make a comment. When I look at patient safety, I've done a lot of patient safety audits at our hospital. The key problem that we see from the staff point to the top, to the physician, is a lack of communication. And it is one of the root causes for 60–70% of the problems that I've investigated. I certainly think communication needs to be a leadership skill. It needs to be on, if we can't accept the others, then I think we've got to at least accept that communication is a key leadership skill, and it should be counted as part of leadership CE.
So
Thank you, Michael.
perhaps we could add communication to that section, specifically spell out communication?
Yeah, I would definitely add the communication, and I would like to speak for emotional intelligence, because that is an evolving area that didn't really exist 15 years ago or 10 years ago, and it's also dealing with working in a multi-generational workforce that you need that emotional intelligence to be able to deal with, somebody that's 70 or somebody that's at 20, to relate with them and communicate with them.
Mm-hmm. And that can still be counted as CE, but you think specifically it needs to be in leadership?
I think they should be classified under leadership, but that's my opinion at this point.
Number one, we could go around and around and around, and we do need to sometime either table or do something, whatever you want, and wrap it up, because what I'm hearing is many different, I wish lists. You can wish 100 more things, but I don't know how you measure my emotional instability or not. I'm trying to wrap my head around it, and I think we're gonna be sitting here till 11 o'clock at least doing this.
Well, it does sound like we have three options. One is to do nothing. One is to add communication into this section, 1399.35A, 50A, 1, or add communication and emotional intelligence.
So if you do nothing, then the consequence is what, if any? If you just say, okay, we're done this.
We reject the comment, but I'm not suggesting we do that. I'm thinking maybe we kind of take a little vote here
Sure.
on those three things. Can I call it, or does the president need to call it? Is this an official vote?
I think this isn't sounding like an unofficial.
Unofficial.
But you-
Yes, getting a poll,
Go ahead,
okay.
Stephanie.
But you
So-
have to you're gonna lay them all out now, right?
I'm gonna lay out all three options, and so vote on one, and then we'll take it down if we need to. So do nothing, show of hands.
Oh, can't you go through all three?
Okay, sorry. The
Yeah.
choices are to do nothing, leave this regulation as it is, to add communication as a leadership skill, or to add communication and emotional intelligence as leadership skills and leadership CE. So,
For two.
okay, yeah, what do you vote for? Just one, two, or three? One is nothing, two is add communication. Okay, it looks like we've got two. You're going,
Three.
I'll
you
do
went
two.
three and you went two. Okay, so everyone, with the exception of one, wants two, which is to add communication as a leadership skill.
Just to be clear on what was happening, this, I think we'll come back to this later on a official formal vote where the public will have a chance to give their comments on that as well.
He wants to vote on it.
I think we'll come back to them. Okay.
Can I?
Okay, we're
sorry.
gonna move on to
Sorry,
comment.
folks. This is Alex Millington. First of all, hello, everybody. I'm Alex Millington. I'm the board's regulatory counsel. It's nice to see everybody. This is the first meeting I think I've been to in a long time. I would just ask that as we go through and we make recommendations for potential changes, that we maybe describe where in the text that change would occur so that it's very clear how the language will read. So do we have maybe another option?
Yeah, I think we need to go back and do that because it's going to take us a long time to get through these 40 comments.
Okay,
And
so do we-
wordsmithing is going to take it another day.
Okay, do we want to do that
Yeah.
at another time?
No, just between you and I.
Okay.
Once we get the intent of what they want, we're going to go back and modify the text.
Okay.
Okay?
So is the ultimate final text gonna, and I'm asking Alex, is that gonna have to come back to the board, or are we gonna ask the board for like a delegation of authority to, establish the final wording based on their intent?
So if what I'm hearing correctly is that the hope would be that we get a vote on how to address the comments today, and then we would come back at the next meeting with that language conforming to the position taken today for a subsequent consideration. Hey, look at this text, and then we would publish that modified text.
Okay, well, as discussed before this meeting, and then just as I just announced about a half hour ago, the intent was to take the modified text, their intent to modify the text after this meeting, to send it out for comment, take those 15-day comments, and then bring that text back here. So not only do they have the comments, they have the text, that I believe that we can modify that text to meet their intent so that we can continue on with this process. Otherwise, we're coming back in 3 or 4 or 5 months just to have them approve the text and then go out for comment. And then maybe have to come back if we get a comment, which we likely will.
Sure, I think that also works if the motion is, as long as the motion is sufficiently clear on exactly what we're doing. I think that also works.
Great. Okay, so we're going to move on to comment number 40. Again, testimony from the hearing held on October 6th. This is still on the leadership category. Then the leadership, I know we're all leaders, but there are many RTs that don't desire to be a manager or leadership role. So if we could change exactly what those leadership classes are going to be. The preceptor training, where RTs are going to have to take a class to be preceptors. We need clarification on that, being we don't really have the time off for the staff and the departments to be missing work to do preceptor training. Those are just my concerns in the department, what I concerns. I recommend rejecting this comment. I don't think the person had a clear understanding, and I think some people showed up to the hearing to have a dialogue, and that's not what the hearing was for. It was for comments. So I recommend we reject that comment.
So do we say, I make a motion to reject the comment, or you?
Just, is there any objection from any of the members?
No.
Okay. Comment number 41, testimony from hearing held October 6th. As for the leadership, I agree that leadership should include communication and should include team building, but going to leadership workshops or seminars of any sort are not going to enhance development of managers, management, or leaders in the industry. That would take formal education, so I do not believe that these changes are in fact going to be productive. I would reject that comment simply because I think the board has already expressed they believe these are, it's a disagreement, you just don't agree with that statement. Okay. We're moving on to CE credit for attendance at public-private meetings. This was one that there was some discussion on, side discussion on this, not side, but in the office. And I wanted to point this out to the board members. You know, you all have to go through the ethics training every year and incompatible activities and that kind of thing. The question from me is, do you want to make private meetings available to CE? And the reason why is there's 2 sides to it. In discussions with legal counsel, we felt it important that you be fully informed. So on one side, it could be perceived as an incompatible activity by using state influence to confer upon a select few an economic advantage, because those people who are private members of CSRC or ARC who have meetings that's only for them and not the public, they're being allowed to collect CE credit for that, but not everybody else can. But on the flip side of that, any person can become a member of those boards, but also there's a variety of ways that people can get their CE through all types of different experiences. And it could be a way to get licensees interested and more active in the profession and pursue serving on one of these boards. So there's an argument either way to go with it. I just think you needed to know that as we move through these comments. So comment number 3 is to remove open to the public. So CSRC, let's see. This was a comment from CSRC and their bylaws on removing the word public. They want to allow their private meetings that's to your board membership, or to your board of directors to be able to get CE, correct? Okay.
The meeting is not available? The public's not invited to those meetings? Is that okay?
Yes, no, they have meetings that they are available to the public, and then they have meetings that are not open to the public.
The meetings that are open to the public are board of director meetings, not board of director meetings.
Like the annual conference.
Okay.
Let's see, he says in here in his comment, we issue CEs to all these attendees. Meetings of CSRCs include board of director meetings and called membership meetings. The CSRC's intent of offering CEs for attendance at its board of director meetings provides an incentive for members to attend and see the inner workings of the CSRC.
So you presented flip sides, and I think the intention of engagement, which we had a big conversation yesterday about, just really engagement of the constituency group, respiratory care practitioners, and the public. I think anything that we can do in our CEU offerings and support that really helps people to get engaged is a positive. So based on we can't do something, I would say that removing from the public really would help with engagement for those that we're really trying to get into the processes, whether it's the respiratory care board, whether it's the professional organizations. I would that would also confer with the AARC in their private meetings as well. Correct. So I'm in support of removing the public.
What category would these meeting?
This is under section 1399.350B, subdivision B. And actually, one of the attachments you have, it's attachment A. So if you look up here, it says agenda item 7, attachment A.
Yes.
That's actually included in the proposed language if you turn to that section.
Right, it says an
350B.
LCP may earn up to 5 hours of CE. Oops.
So there is a maximum.
5 hours.
Okay.
Oh, sure, that's, yeah. Sorry.
So again, I'm in support just based on the conversation this far.
I support as well.
Okay, is there any objection to it?
Can I ask a clarification, please?
Yeah.
So if a private party decided that they wanted to offer a CEU to a specific group of people, this would prevent them, if it has to be open to the public, this would prevent a private party from offering to a specific group of practitioners a CEU unless they opened it also to the public?
No, this particular section is only dealing with the respiratory care board meetings, AARC, and CSRC.
Okay.
So our meetings absolutely have to be open to the public to get CE credit, but now we're going to allow AARC and CSRC to include those smaller groups for CE credit. That's what we're saying right now. Is there anyone that has an objection to that? Okay, then we're going to move on, and we're going to assume that as accept. Comment number 18, CSRC recommends may earn up to 5 hours of CE credit through physical attendance at the Respiratory Care Board. They okay, we just did that. So we just accepted that, okay. Comment number, I know there's another comment somewhere where they wanted this to be included online. And I hope that comes up. Will you make a note that I come back to that? If it doesn't, okay. 15 of 30 CE live course requirement. Oh. Oh, what? 18?
Looks like what they're, the one you said we just did. They're suggesting that it be all this additional stuff.
Oh, no, those notes were from their, if I understood the comments right, CSRC made a recommendation, but all the notes in that were just the feedback you got from different members, but your final recommendation was the recommendation. Can I ask for that clarification? Do you know that? So in the letter that CSRC sent us, the official one on the rulemaking file, there would be like, here's how it is currently, here's what we recommend. You even say CSRC recommendation, and then the next category were notes. And lots of times it conflicted with the CSRC recommended, and I think you were just gathering all the input that you received. Is that correct? Okay, so I don't think that's really their official comment or recommendation. They were just adding all the feedback they were getting.
SRC recommendation.
Right. What do you got?
Region board meetings, managers meetings, and educators. It looks like they're proposing that specific text be added to it.
Oh, okay.
When it looks like all we decided to do was strike open to the public, right?
Okay, so if we go back to number 18, let me read the complete recommendation. An RCP may earn up to 5 hours of leadership CE credit through physical attendance at the Respiratory Care Board meetings, California Society for Respiratory Care, or American Association for Respiratory Care meetings open to its membership to include general membership meetings, CSRC board meetings, region board meetings, manager meetings, and educator meetings. Reza's pointing out, do we want to be specific in naming all of those items, or do we just want to say, keep it open to the public as well as private meetings, but not mention specific meetings? My point is, I don't think we want to mention specific meetings because those can change. Okay, just want to make sure we're doing that. Do you think that was the intent of it?
Well, it looks like they're accepting 3 and rejecting 8.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, next page, page 3 of the comments, 15 of 30 CE live course requirement. This is where we got a huge response. A lot of people opposed to the live requirements. However, if you look into the comments deeper, this is where I feel like people didn't understand that we had changed it to allow for online learning, our online interactive courses. They were still under the impression they had to travel and personally, physically attend somewhere. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Comment number 13, I am writing in opposition of the California Respiratory Care Board proposal for Amendment 16 CCR 1399.350, Continuing Education Subdivision C, and the requirement that 15 of the 30 hours of instruction must be earned from live courses or meetings. Again, I would just reject that simply because I think the board has taken the position already by producing the language of a different position. So this same person is also, she's been great as far as, she really wants her voice heard and did previously as well. She started the next change.org petition, comment number 14 here, and she had a total of 169 signatures, but as I looked at them, some of them were even foul language, and I'm not from her, but I mean, just, random people signing this thing. About 105 of them look legitimate, California RCPs. So it was still a significant amount. And what they wanted in their action was for the respiratory care practitioners in California have signed this petition requesting the board not to make any live or face-to-face requirements for CE. And I believe we have done that, and that's why it is rejected. Is there any opposition to that? Okay. Comment number 19. This is from the CSRC on the same topic. They agree with the language. And they say, please consider adding instructor-led skill days. And I have a note about that later. So, I do have a question. Is instructor-led skill days a common term used throughout California?
In our hospital.
Okay, he said no, yes.
To me.
Not, no?
Really? Really?
Okay, so just keep that in mind as we come back. We'll come back to comment number 19. Number 39, from testimony held on 10/6. The highlights of this is, I believe, is that the 15 live CEUs are going to place a very huge hardship, both financially and mentally, on a huge portion of our RTs, particularly those RTs in rural areas of California, which is significant. And they later go on to say, I do note that if the department provides a skills day or workshop, that it can suffice as live interactive CEU. So she's still under the impression these people have to travel, but if we were to accept those skill workshops in their department, it would be fine. So I say that, I don't know, how would you reject or accept this? I guess accept, because we're acknowledging that, we'll come back to it. Hang tight, hang tight.
But can I just make a
Yeah.
comment here? So again, the live definition seems to be misconstrued in different ways. And I'm just looking at the language. Section 1399.350, agenda item 17, I think this is the agenda item 7, page 11 of 44, just so we're in context.
Hold on, what,
So looking at agenda item number 7,
Seven.
attachment B,
thank you,
page 11 of 44.
okay.
So all of the comments in this area so far really are about understanding what the intention of the live is. And so just to say for us to understand, subject to the requirements, limitations of article blah, blah, blah. However, a minimum of 15 hours of CEs, as outlined in subdivision A, must be earned from live courses or meetings provided with interaction, right? And so again, if in fact, as we go through these, there needs to be maybe a change in this language to reflect the variety of what live is. So a live could be going to a conference, which I think many people think of live as that. A live could be that they're in their local area at the institution that they're employed and they attend a CEU event in person. That would qualify under this area, correct? Right? They could do a skills day workshop in their institution. As long as it is approved for CEs, that would qualify in this area. So I'm just kind of thinking about any of these things where we're looking at a live course or a meeting constitutes meeting this area requirement of 15 CEUs.
I agree. I
Right.
think that the workshops and the life skills days already qualify.
That's what I'm thinking
Yeah.
here. So if we need to be more, maybe change the language a little bit, I'm not suggesting that.
Yeah.
But just to say, all of these comments do qualify in this area.
Yeah, no, I don't, I think the language is clear, because it goes on to say what that defines it.
Yes.
So I feel like the language is clear. I think they were remembering a year ago. And, yes, and so if we go back to our comments by topic, page 4, we're coming back to 19 and 39, where both of those are talking about that. That is what I had said in my note on page 5, at the bottom, new RCB staff note. the two things that we could do is add instructor-led skill days if that's common terminology. But again, it doesn't preclude it already. The existing language allows it. Another thing, though, that the board needs to consider, this is a tricky one, is because right now, we are only approving CE that is provided by acute care hospitals licensed by DHS. We changed this language to do that. So and the reasoning behind that was because acute care hospitals generally have education systems, they have a whole units dedicated to education, whereas some of these smaller facilities, skilled nursing or other types of facilities by DHS, might just have a manager on staff who decides to give you an education class, and it's not as well thought out necessarily. And I'm not saying all of them are, but it does give a disadvantage if somebody's in a rural area working for a skilled nursing facility and getting CEs at their employer. Okay, so stay with me. We're still on 19 and 39. Now we're going to go to page 5 and go to number 40. We're going to go through all these comments and then go back and have a discussion. If we could just get clarification about the 15 live CEUs, does that mean Zoom live? If we don't want live, we need them closer to RTs that live in rural cities so we're not having to spend so much driving in our tails. So that comment, I'm suggesting we reject because it's just a comment with asking for clarification. It's not really suggesting anything that doesn't already exist. Comment number 41, I am a respiratory therapist and a professor at Modesto Junior College in Central California. I'm also on the education committee for the CSRC, but do not represent them in these comments. I'd like to comment on the 15 live CEUs and reiterate what some of the others have said for those who live in rural areas in Northern California. This is an unfair burden placed on them. And again, he's going into the seminars. He says there's not sufficient quantity of live seminars, or at times there are convenient for therapists to attend. The resources have not been allocated as far as getting departments to be able to offer their own CEUs. Many of these smaller departments in rural areas do not have education directors within their departments that would be responsible for coordinating that. I think that CEUs being live face-to-face, perhaps as Katie mentioned, being phased in, although I've still not seen any evidence from the board or otherwise how this will improve patient safety. And you'll see, and it may not be, so that's another consideration. He's not specific on whether it's about, he doesn't understand that we can do live online PCEs. I take it that way, but that doesn't, he's not specific there. So that's a consideration that you need to take into account. Craddock, I'm employed at UC Davis Health and as part of the CSRC, but the views that I'm mentioning are my own. I do not represent either just myself as an RT for 15 years. I want to clarify and piggyback off what everyone else is saying regarding the live CEUs. The live CEUs can be, from what I understand, attending a Zoom or a webinar session or those types of virtual platforms where there is a live presentation with a question and answer period afterwards. I received one last week for free. There are plenty of them available, especially now after COVID. They have become more available. So that does get considered as live CEU. I know Katie had mentioned that RTs agree that those are important and the best way to learn and being able to ask questions and get clarifying questions is important. I am completely in support of moving forward and seeing if we can have live CEUs or being mandated by the RCB that so many CEUs be performed live personally. So I think we want to accept that comment. And then, okay, before we go to 43, so let's just back up and go over the issues that we have here. Comment number 19 says they agree with the language, but they think we should add instructor-led skill days. Do we want to add instructor-led skill days?
I'm not opposed, but I don't know if it's necessary.
Okay, so we're going to accept it?
It would be accepted.
Okay.
As a CE, right?
Yeah.
Without us having to state it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Will we need to define instructor-led skill days?
So let me see if I understand the conversation right now. Is the acceptance of the comment based on the implication that it already allows it, or that you would like to insert language clarifying that it would be allowed?
We are suggesting that we add instructor-led skill days.
Okay. Okay.
Will we need to define instructor-led skill days? Can we not add instructor-led skill days?
Could I ask a question?
Yeah,
We do accept BRN, correct? CEUs,
no, only live ones.
only live.
Yeah,
Most of the skill days that I've attended are sanctioned by BRN.
uh-huh.
And it seems to me that they're already inclusive. In other words, an RCP could go to a hospital-led skill day that is issuing BRN CEUs.
Yeah, those are two separate things. One is you have to do an approved provider, but you also have half of your hours need to be live.
Right.
So,
I was just thinking of a way that you didn't have to add instructor-led skill days because in many ways,
yeah,
it's already included.
well, I think it is already included in the language.
If you add instructors-led, then you're going to have to qualify what an instructor is.
I think we will.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to accept the part of the comment that we agree with the language, and then we're going to reject the adding instructor-led skill days because it's already included, already covered. Comment number 39, we accepted. Comment number 40, we are rejecting simply because it was I don't know, is that accurate, Alex? Do we reject or accept it if somebody's just asking a question?
Just indicate that it doesn't require a response.
Okay, you don't have to accept, oh,
You could, but I would also say in this particular comment, they are suggesting that if we do want live, we need them closer to RTs that live in rural cities. And so I think the note, if we're not accepting it, would be rejecting both aspects of it. One that it's not really requesting anything, but in the latter part of the question that we're not taking the action that they suggest.
okay. So we will be rejecting that.
Return to 39.
Oh, sure.
Did you say we accepted? Because there's a lot in here. And I'm trying to parse out what is the actual suggestion. And towards
Okay.
the bottom, this person says, so I'm suggesting that there is an introductory phase of kind of the most concrete thing that I can pull out of this as far as their suggestion reads.
Oh,
I'm
thank you.
suggesting there's an introductory phase of the live CEUs, and that we start off somewhere around 5 to 7 being required as live, and introduce more of the requirement for live CEUs after 1 to 2 cycles of the renewal period, so that we can have time to get ready for the 15 that you want to require. So that's a pretty specific suggestion, and it didn't sound like that was being
Yeah, you're right.
incorporated.
So on number 39, we're going to reject number 39. Thank you, Reza. And there's a lot of things that we're rejecting in there. The statement that Reza just said. And, yeah, I mean, the other part was more of an inquiry. So the part that Reza just said, I think nailed it. Is everybody in agreement with that? Anyone? Okay. So number 40, we rejected. Number 41, I'd like to comment on the 15 live CEUs. They think this is an unfair burden because they feel like it has to be in person, so we're going to reject that comment. Because that is not, in fact, what the regulations state. Okay, and then we're moving to 43. This is Fantasia again. She is an instructor at Modesto Junior College in the AS program and the BS program. And she's not representing the college, but she did the change.org. We talked about that earlier. And I wanted to, and so I actually put the change.org in here with all the attachments, and there were some, I think, interesting attachments. I don't know if you had the time to look at them, but it's attachment D, agenda item 7, attachment D. And again, I think it goes back to e-learning. I think Fantasia still, she was very vocal in the first one, and I think she believed that we still were not doing online interaction. Because you see there's a lot of support for e-learning in here. And that was her argument, saying you can do things online. I don't have anything to point out on the attachments. But when I looked at them, that's where I was
She did
headed
it.
with it.
Yeah, e-learning for health professions, these particular articles.
Yeah. So as far as whether to accept or reject, we already. On comment 14. We already rejected that because that's not what the language had stated. So on comment number 43, I'm suggesting that we reject it based on the fact that we do allow the live CEs face-to-face, online, which is what I think she was proposing, but she was doing it in a way that she didn't understand that. Okay? Okay. Okay, and then at the end of page 5, I did already mention this. Just keep in mind the whole acute care hospital CEs as we move through. Page 6, comment number 20 on the law and professional ethics course. CSRC agrees with the language. We will accept that comment. Number 11, delete, quote, "The course shall consist of 2 hours dedicated to professional ethics and 1 hour toward California law. The board may opt to prepare or edit in full or part any portion of the course, and renumber subdivision E accordingly. This language conflicts with the new language found in 1399.352.7D2. The language to edit the course is not necessary as the board designee is authorized to approve the course." So what we found is after we did the language, we found that these two, legal and staff found that these two things were in conflict. And so we're asking for you to accept this change because this is more substantive. If we want to go, do we want to go back to the language itself and review that? This doesn't have a tag on it. If we go back to section 1399.350.5B,
It's this one for 11.
and 1399.352.7E1.
I'm confused.
I know, I'm so sorry, this is very tedious.
To make them color coded.
So this is the one I'm using right now. It says modified text right here. And unfortunately, I'm not sure what happened to the label up here. Oh, that would have been good, yeah.
And modified text, I got it.
What's that? Okay. 350.5B. Oh, no, 352.7E, sorry. God darn it. 7E. Okay, page 11 of 15 of the draft modified text. Kind of looks like this. And subdivision C at the bottom there, at least 2 hours of the content of the course shall be dedicated to professional ethics with a concentration in the following areas. And so that way we were, yeah. Do you want me to bring it to you?
Well,
Just remember, this is gonna be the biggest part of the meeting right now.
okay, I've read this and this, two different documents.
This is the one I'm looking at.
Another attachment.
Don't,
Hang in there, right here.
another test, thank you, Bob.
No, I apologize. This is.
All right.
And my Dramamine too, because I'm getting dizzy from the.
So, that, on page 11 of 15, we're on 352.7. You actually have to turn the page, well, to go to E1. And you see it highlighted there where it's struck out. We had to delete that in order to accept the changes of adding D2, current activities of the RCP profession. Because we wanted to include current activities of the RCP profession in the ethics course to keep people apprised of what current events are happening. But in order to do that, we needed to change this other language that was specific to, it had to be about the law. And so that's what this change is for. So we will accept that comment? Okay. Or change. Comment number 22, approve CE credentials and certifications. A minimum, CSRC agrees with this language. We will accept that. Any objections?
No.
Comment number 21, they agree with the language, CSRC. We will accept that?
Yes.
Thank you. There was a note on that one, though. The MBRC now has the Asthma Educator Specialist exam as a credential, in addition to it being offered by another organization. Would you like to add that to the credentials recognized for CE credit? Is there anyone who does not? Okay, then we will add that. Comment number 23. They agree with the language, we'll accept that. Comment number 24. Agree with the language, we will accept that. New category, approved course providers. Comment number 25. I agree with the language, we will accept that.
Yes.
Comment number 26, agree with the language, we will accept that.
Yes.
Comment number 42, we're on a new subject, preceptors. Lots of comments in this section. There was a general inquiry. I had wanted to put on the record a clarifying question regarding the preceptor course, whether or not these courses would be mandated for anyone who precepts a student or new hire respiratory care practitioner if that course is only for seeking CEUs for precepting. And I did make a staff set note that says it is not going to be required. This was done as an incentive to hopefully increase the quality of precepting, but it will not be a requirement for anyone to take these courses or to be a preceptor. If it's just an inquiry, do we have to accept or reject it?
Yeah, I think what you would do is you would technically reject it, but you'd offer in the final statement of reasons an explanation for the question. You don't have to. You could note that because it's not raising a question or suggesting some action be taken on the proposed regulatory language, that it's not under the APA relevant to the text or making a suggestion. But if the board would like to offer clarifying information, it certainly can. But I think technically the position you would take is that you're rejecting it because it's not asking you to do something.
Okay, Great, thank you, Alex. Comment number 27. CSRC is recommending a change to section 1399.352.6A. And this you'll see this again later. We limited preceptors from getting education and getting credit for precepting to acute care hospitals. And the global theme here is that they think it should be at any facility. And so that's a question for the board, a legitimate question. And again, it goes back to, we felt like acute care hospitals had the better quality kind of education, but it does limit some of the others. A happy medium might be,
But this is specifically to RCPs, precepting students?
Both. So not only if you want to take a preceptor course to become a preceptor, so we give CE credit for the person teaching the preceptor course to RCPs, and we also give it to the RCPs who are precepting students. All of that has to be done at an acute care hospital. So the big question is, do you want to change that? And if so, do you want both of those to be acceptable at any facility, or maybe just one or the other? Did I lose anybody?
I think to include both.
At any facility?
Yes.
I'm hearing, I see a nod over here. Do you want to allow it at any facility?
Question. Would an acute care facility include, for example, a children's hospital,
Yeah.
which is a specialty?
Yeah. Okay. Any way in?
Just one quick question. Preception is not only used for students, it's also used for new employees? Would preception of new employees be eligible for CE credit?
No, it shouldn't be.
Okay.
That was not raised before. I think we defined it in here somewhere that preceptorship is for students.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Then I would say anywhere we have students assigned clinically, they should be allowed to claim preceptor.
And that's pretty much how CSRC wrote it. So are there any objections to accepting this change?
No.
Okay.
They have other.
Oh, and there's a second part on that. We had written that in order to become a preceptor, you had to have a minimum of 2 years of full-time experience as an RCP, and that really cut out people who maybe work part-time. So they were recommending that we do something like 2 years full-time experience, or its equivalent within the last 5 years, to allow somebody who's worked part-time for 2 years, or 4 years, to still meet the full-time requirement. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
This change is being made.
Yes, and so is the second one. Okay. Okay, I think I would like to elaborate on that and get a justification more, because I do have to document this for the thing, and we have, our current statement of reason says that nearly all clinical education is provided at acute care facilities. In general, acute care facilities are organized, have education departments, and are held to a higher standard by regulatory and credentialing entities. They have multiple areas where RCPs are most often employed: emergency, neonatal, acute care, ICU, transport. Therefore, the board, I believed it prudent to offer CE incentive for preceptors at these facilities. So when we change our mind to say we're going to accept it at any facilities, can you give me a little, why we would do that?
I can speak to that. It isn't always the case that a hospital is organized that way. Many acute care hospitals have no education department. Some do, some don't. So there may be an LTAC, for example, that may provide better education and training than an acute care hospital. So it's just really difficult to just limit it to that.
Okay,
I have a question, comment. I have a comment. So, I'm having trouble regarding acute care facility and any hospital. And I would think it'd be the level of patient acuity which would dictate that, or am I wrong? Because university hospitals have usually a higher level of patient, needs, acuity, and other hospitals might not, like just the local ones in a small town.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we offer it to every hospital as we're
Every
That's what it is.
facility is what we're saying, yeah.
facility
Where there,
Because I don't
where
think
there
you
are
can-
students.
where there are students are
Yeah.
there? Oh, well, you're all the experts on this. I just have a hard time with acute care hospital facility and where our students are. And you say they can be equivalent as far as the preceptors and other teaching abilities, correct? Good. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to comment number 7. This was, we did address that. You accepted number 7 by, this might be a different section. Nope, that's the same one where we're accepting the part-time, full-time experience. Comment number 28. On section 1399.352.6A4, CSRC is recommending the changing the language to at any facility which accepts RTT students performing clinical rotation at the facility. And we have accepted that in the previous comment, so I'm not sure what the difference is here. 26A4A. I'm just wondering what the difference is.
Right.
So you would reject
2.6A. Okay, and so we are gonna accept, comment number what are we on?
28.
28. Just A4. It's not making sense to me.
Are you accepting that?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so this is a little bit different. This one on comment number 28 is saying, what are they saying?
Who can give the preceptor course?
I know, so why does it say at any facility which accepts RT students?
That's what they're recommending, so that it's not just acute care. but
Oh,
we can
so
also-
somebody giving the course. Now, right now, we allow a representative by the AARC, the CSRC, or an acute care facility or employer using the course materials from the provider listed in A or B of this subdivision. It says employer already. Oh, wait, acute care facility and employer. So do you want to allow a skilled nursing facility, random, John Jones facility, to be able to provide the preceptor course to the RCPs? Or should it be limited still to a representative of the AARC, the CSRC, or an acute care hospital?
Could I suggest one other would be a school that offers healthcare.
I'm not following. You mean a respiratory education program?
A respiratory education program, or even a nursing education program. They would also offer preceptor training.
Okay, maybe we need to pull this and look at it closer then. if we offer it at a respiratory education program, it completely obliterates this language, and that's a completely different concept. And the whole BRN thing, that you're just throwing something at me that wasn't ever mentioned before, had no idea that it was even offered that way. So you're telling me respiratory education programs do preceptor training?
They're capable of it, and they can, and they do.
That's just a crossover. So should we pull this whole preceptor section and maybe take a better look at it? So we want to pull it out of the regulatory language?
If it takes another couple of minutes to solve it, leave it, and then pull it.
Where did you see the glitch?
Well, if we had to go in here and define on the what an instructor is, and it was specifically defined to not include a respiratory education program. Because this was not to allow a clinical educator that if that's his job, then that's his job to provide that preceptor training. It's not part of an additional CE category. He's already employed to provide clinical education. And so we made it a very big point in this language to point out it did not include them.
And this is specifically for getting credits for giving the class?
Yes, so they could still give the class. They're not prevented from
They
doing
just
that. It's just they're
couldn't
not
get
getting CE credit.
That would be acceptable, yeah.
Okay, so just leave it as is then. Okay. Okay.
I think the comment then was specific to adding, where it says small a5, to adding not just acute care, but any facility, correct?
Yes, back to where original, we were saying, do we want to allow any facility to teach the preceptor course?
As long as his uses the accepted.
Yes, using, so let me make sure. As long as it's using the AARC or CSRC's course, is that what you're asking?
I have no objection.
Preceptors. Did you find that, Ray? I heard you say yeah.
No, I'm just
Okay.
reading all of this.
Okay.
total. As long as they're using A or B of this. As long as they're using A or B of the subdivision, so if they're at a facility and they're still using standard acceptable materials to do this, then they would qualify.
Yes, okay. So in subdivision C, we will add any facility. Okay. So that is accepted, and yes to your answer, Ricardo. Thank you, Ray. Okay, comment number 35. 29.
Did the same thing, so it would be.
What section is that, though? B2. Now, that has to do with,
Stephanie, should we plan a small break somewhere?
sure. That's,
Okay. How long?
No,
it's up to you.
Oh, 10 minutes?
shooting.
10 minutes.
Okay, we're gonna go back to comment number 29. We're on page 8 of the comments arranged by topic. Comment number 29, CSRC written comment for section 1399.352.6 subdivision B2. They are recommending, again, that we do at any facility which accepts RT students performing clinical rotation at the facility. And this is in regard to preceptors responsible for direct supervision and instruction to students in an acute care facility. Instead so this would be for preceptors to gain CE credit at any facility. We accept that comment? Okay. Accept. It's comment number 35. Is employed by, accept? Okay, I think that's good. New subject, preceptors, section 1399.352.6B, subdivision B2. Oh, it's continued, I guess, or it's a new subject. Okay, so these are the hours, and each one of these comments on page 9, comments number 30, 31, and 32, CSRC is suggesting we change the number of hours to equivalency to the number of CE hours. So we currently have, you get 5 CE hours for doing 1,000 to 1,999 hours of preceptor. They're suggesting 300 to 500. Any discussion on that? Or just reject because you've already determined the number of hours?
Just quickly did a calculation. Based on 12-hour shifts, which is most RCPs perform 12-hour shifts, 1,000 to 2,000 would be nearly half of their shifts in one cycle. They would have to be a preceptor. And that seems to be more than I would expect. We'd set the threshold for 5.
Did you calculate how many 12-hour days that would be to accumulate 1,000 hours? Did you get that?
I did, just a second here. It would be 83 days to get 1,000 hours.
Quite a bit.
Yeah,
Remember, it's a 2-year cycle, too.
it's a 2-year cycle, yeah.
And the momentum behind it was also to encourage people to take this course, so we have quality CE, so that is another factor.
I'm just more worried about the opportunity for all the RCPs to be able to get this, because would they be able to claim less CEs, or would they have to get the 1,000 hours to only claim 5? Could they claim 2 or 1 CE?
The way this is written, they would have to have at least 1,000 to get 5 hours.
I would say, I think that's more than I would expect.
Okay. So CSRC is suggesting 300 to 500 for this first tier.
Would 500 be sufficient?
Yeah, I think there's plenty of opportunity to get 500. I'm worried about people having the opportunity to actually do this. You know, there will be a certain group that will do it easily, but there'll be others that would struggle to do that we probably want to encourage. The people who are already currently doing the precepting, they would have no trouble doing this, but the people we want to encourage to do it might struggle to reach that threshold. So I would suggest we go to 500.
So a range of 500 to 1,000?
Yeah.
Support that.
Again,
You also have facilities that are still on 8-hour shifts, and you have home care companies that have preceptors for their staff and for others, and it would be, and students rotate through. And I'm thinking 500 would be more realistic,
Okay,
because it's going to put a certain amount of an economic drag on the employer also, in pulling these folks out of the
yeah,
workforce.
And again, just to give context, I'm going to take your calculation and shift it just a little differently to an 8-hour shift. The 1,000-hour minimum for a 2-year period would be equivalent to about just over 1 day per week of precepting over that 2 years. And so if we look at it just in context of that average, I think it is reasonable to move it down to 500. That would be about doing precepting once every other week with a student. And I think, again, to meet the intention of regular preceptorship and to give access to as many respiratory care practitioners, I think 500 is a good
to
minimum.
equal 5 CEs.
To equal 5 CEs.
Okay. So then the next tier would then be, I guess we'll go 999 on that one, and then 1,000 to, are we going in 500 increments then?
Yes.
To 1,499, and then 1,500 to 1,999. So do you still feel, when you look at it that way with 1,999, that that's an incentive enough for 15 CEs? I'm sorry, 1,500 hours for
Yeah.
15 CEs, you think that's right, on
Yeah.
target?
Now, are they limited on how many preceptor hours they can submit per cycle?
No.
So they could meet all of their clinical CE requirements just by precepting?
I have to check. I can't remember if this is counted as clinical, or I think this is leadership.
Oh, this is leadership.
Yeah, so they still would need to do direct clinical education.
As long as we don't, as long as it's not clinical, I think that's fine. yeah.
Okay,
So there is no cap as far as the total amount of Cs?
Yes, there's a cap, but there's no cap on how many hours they can precept, but they're
Right.
only gonna get up to 15. Is that what it says? Yeah, 15 CE hours.
Don't feel that that is excessive.
Yeah, and it's specific to leadership.
Okay.
And the leadership threshold is 10 per
Yes.
cycle.
Yes, and you can, but you can also get up to 5 doing other things, so they can still count the whole 15 hours, but they still are gonna need to get 15 in direct clinical. Okay, so we're good with that. We're gonna, I guess we reject these, but we're gonna explain that the conversation led to changing the hours.
Yeah, that's correct. So technically you're rejecting it because you're not doing exactly what they're requesting, but you would note that you are doing something else.
Can
Thank
can
you,
that be
Alex.
studied a little further or held for reconsideration later? We can talk about it later?
Talk about what?
Oh, the total amount of hours, or,
You want to discuss it further?
Oh, now would be the
I'll-
time. We're talking right now, and then at the end, we're gonna go through it all with no more discussion. You have anything you want to discuss? Okay. Page 10. Still on, let's see, we're on section 1399.352.6B 2D. Preceptors claiming CE credit shall retain records that clearly indicate the name of the student supervised, the hours precepted on each date, and written time logs signed or initiated by the education program's clinical director of all hours for a period of 4 years from the date of the instruction. We got a few comments on this. The written comment from CSRC is recommending a simpler method of tracking hours, create a standardized editable PDF form good for a calendar year, which RCP would use to track their precepting hours and have their supervisor, manager, director sign off, validate at the end of the year. And then there was many concerns from their audience that are noted there, but that's not part of the comment. And then the testimony, comment number 41, that was received at the hearing says, as we move forward on the preceptor side, the original proposal as written right now calls for the Director of Clinical Education to validate their hours. This is completely unreasonable and would not be possible in our case. We cover multiple hospitals, over 12 different hospitals, and maybe 10 different preceptors at each different facility. It would be very difficult administratively. I think it's good to train them, but it needs to be provided again at a cost-effective manner and not put a burden on the existing respiratory therapists. And so, the way I had taken these comments was, one is, shouldn't the clinical director already be very well aware of where their students are and how many hours they're submitting? So that concerned me that perhaps that's not being done. And then, saying the form thing and the burdensome thing, problem is that we got another comment about FERPA. Is that in here? What number?
Does the proposal say that,
Oh, okay, so the notes are there, yeah, from the FERPA. And that was concerning, and I know, so we talked with legal counsel a little bit, and I don't think that that applies to us. Do you want to elaborate on that, Alex?
Sure. So, in my conversations with other legal counsel, these proposed regulations relate to the requirement of keeping the records and not disclosing the records. And that questions of the application of FERPA relating to the disclosure could be handled on a case-by-case basis if those records were required to be disclosed. I would also say, though, that I will continue to look into this issue. I don't know that it would be appropriate to state categorically whether or not it does apply. I don't have enough information, but I do think that the fact is that these regulations are relating to the requirement of keeping the records. Yeah.
So, especially our RCPs on the board, do you find this to be burdensome to have the clinical director need to sign off on each preceptor's hours? I think that's the first step.
so the regulation says that to validate the hours, it has to be a director of clinical education?
It says the RCP preceptor themselves shall be recording the name of the student, the hours that they spent with them on logs, and then initialed by the education program's clinical director. So the clinical director from the school would come in and say, oh, you're precepting my student. Yep, those are the hours.
Some hospitals don't have students, though.
But my understanding is the clinical director would be of that program that assigns the students there,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
right? So it's the clinical director, and so I'll go through a process that I know. I'm a clinical director. I assign my students wherever, whenever. I know who's leading that. I may be working with the clinical site, and that clinical site may also identify specific practitioners that might be working. I'm a specific practitioner that's gone through, I'm going to go through the whole process. I've gone through a training program that's been approved. I'm using some CEUs to do that, yada, yada, yada. I'm working for the institution. I'm assigned a student periodically. I keep the logs of that. I then say, okay, I'm ready to finish this process, maintain my records. I send that to the clinical director, right? So that's one. Others, I may not be using it for this. I'm not keeping records. I don't care. I get CEUs either way, no problem. So as a clinical director, I'm only responsible for those who request of me, which would be via an email. If there's an easy format in which to sign, that doesn't take much time. How many people would that be in a 2-year period? A dozen?
My question is, can you actually verify it, though? Are you sure your student's done 4 hours under this RCP or even 4 hours at the facility?
So I'll go back as a clinical director. I need to keep records of where my students are and who they're working with. And the intention is I'm not going to be checking hour for hour. I've built a relationship with the people that I'm working with. And again, I'm trusting based on What they submit, I'm reviewing and say, okay, this looks right, I will sign it off, right?
Okay, so who are the people you're working with? You're not working with the preceptor, you're working with somebody else at the hospital?
I'm the clinical director of the program that assigns students wherever while they're in my program.
And who do you work with at a particular hospital?
I could be working with a clinical preceptor, I could be working with the clinical educator, I could be working with the supervisor, I could be working with, I'm looking at people who are current program directors or clinical directors here.
Well, the RCP that has a student signs their timesheet for that day.
Mhm.
So it accounts for the hours that that student was with that RCP. So that's very easy to do.
And again, it's the RCP who wants to utilize those hours, they're keeping the log. And ultimately, at the end of that log, they would be working with the clinical director at the program, the educational program, who would sign off that document. So I don't think it's an arduous process.
And do you think that's appropriate versus the educator at the hospital, maybe?
Well, again, what do we stipulate here?
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep it the way it is? Okay. Okay, so that would be comment at 33, is that correct? Well, 33 is recommending, we're gonna reject this comment because there's a lot in here, but as far as creating a form, I mean, we might do that, but it wouldn't be like an official form. Here. I think we'll go ahead and research the FERPA, but we're gonna reject that comment, number 33, unless FERPA reveals something we were not aware of. And we're rejecting the recommend a simpler method of tracking hours. I think that anyone can create this form of these 5 categories if they choose to, and we may as well. But as far as in the regulation, it's being rejected. Comment number 41, we are rejecting that because we don't feel that it is a burden. Okay, comment number 34, preceptors, section 1399.352.6, subdivision C. Comment 34 says, agree with language, accepted. Section 1399.352.6, subdivision C1C provides so we're providing that the instructor who teaches the preceptor course to RCPs, it used to say had a minimum of 4 years of full-time experience, and we are suggesting to alter that to 8,000 hours as a respiratory care practitioner, because in the regulatory world, it got too complicated. Because we started off with what CSRC recommended here, equivalent to 4 years full-time experience within 6 years. But then these legal eagles came up with all kinds of caveats, and so we said, well, the best way to do that is just to say 8,000 hours then, which would be equivalent to 4 years, within 6 years. All right, do we accept that comment? Okay. Comment 10. C1, we kind of talked about this one, 3526 C1D, is employed by an acute care facility or designated by the ARC or CSRC to provide said education. In this scenario, we're changing I don't even know that we need anything. We might just be able to delete it. But the intent is the same, that it can be at any facility. And it needs to be the ARC or CSRC course. And in here, oh, this was just a staff, so this isn't technically a comment that we have to take a position on. Correct, Alex, or no?
I'm sorry, which one are we referring to?
Oh, it was CSRC, never mind, take it back. sorry, I pulled back my question. Add or designated by the ARC. Okay, so we're going to accept that comment, because we are adding ARC or CSRC. Page 11. Last page, okay, guys, hang in there. Section 1399.352.6C1D. They are recommending that we change is employed by an acute care facility or designated by the AARC or CSSD to provide such education, and that is the recommended change that we just accepted. So I don't know why this is separated out. What's the difference?
No, I think it just ran over.
Oh, it just ran over? No, this is separate. Comment number 10 and comment 35. Aren't they the same thing?
35 had C1, A through D.
Okay. I do believe that it's the same and accepted. Okay. Preceptors. Section 1399.352.6, subdivision C2, D and E. Oh, these are kind of like the catch-all. These are all separate topics. 1399.352.6 C2. And is C2.
They're all agree.
Oh, okay. Accept. Now, what was the one I needed to get back to? I'm not sure if we missed it or if I went too fast, but I know in one of these comments it said about board meetings or AARC meetings or CSRC meetings that are held online. Right now, you have to be in physical attendance to get the CE credit. I think it's difficult to tell whether somebody participated in an online board meeting when there's no required interaction.
How would, in an audit, for example, how would the RCP provide proof of that?
Well, the entity that's providing the board meeting would be the one issuing the certificate, if you will. So if somebody attended our board meeting online, I don't think, well, if somebody attended our board meeting online and we accepted that, we would just see that they signed on, and that's all we could do, and then give them a certificate.
Who gives us the certificate?
The entity that provides it, CSRC, ARC, or us.
So would that get us in the business of issuing CEUs? Huh?
It does put us in the business of issuing CEUs for board meetings, but that was already a given. Now it's just, is it in person or online? That's the question. I need to find that comment.
I would say,
C.
as long as there's a way to,
Say that?
as long as there's a way to document that, I don't see a problem with it.
So accept online participation?
I have a comment. You can document when someone calls in on the phone, but they could go and take kids to school, do shopping, come back.
Right.
So you have no way of knowing. So how strict do you want to be? Just because they signed on and that counts and they open the phone line?
Okay.
That's the same for any online event. Even, I would say even a live event, you know.
Many events, I can't say, I don't know what, the use of many, who knows what many is, sometimes requires you to go, and this is not the case, but step by step by step by step before you finish. But on a board meeting, you just can't do that. But then you're not strict about it, and you give them the credit. That's it.
So just clarification.
I'm sorry.
Clarification would be up to 5 CEUs, right? So we're looking at a small category. I'll go back to engagement, and we want to offer up ways for an engagement, and so I think about this meeting. Okay, we're offering it, via webcast. Some meetings, people can do that, but they can't get here. It's only offered in one place. I would, again, go to allowing the virtual online, just to provide more access and to promote engagement.
I agree.
Just to clarify, we're webcasting it today, so we can't tell who's online. You're talking about just on those times when we do WebEx, you would want to accept it.
With the camera.
Yes.
This is not camera now, right?
Yeah, they're filming it, yeah. But we just don't get to hear back.
Oh, I see.
This is not
Okay.
WebEx, this is just casting out.
Casting out.
Yeah. So Ray is suggesting on only those formats where you can still have the interactive. Even if there is none, the capability's there.
Yes, medical board does that.
Yeah.
But there's a give and take, conversation.
Yeah. I think we're moving in that direction.
Yeah, I think that would be essential.
Okay, I cannot locate that specific comment. I just know that it's in here somewhere. So we are going to allow for online, which will drastically alter the language. But we'll figure it out the best we can, and we're going to move forward the best we can and hopefully meet the one-year timeline that's required. I did notice one that I did miss on page 5. I don't know how, it's not substantive, I don't think, but section 1399.350C. I'm just going to read from the beginning. Subject to the requirements and limitation of this article, CE credit may be earned in any of the forms of learning experiences set forth in section 1399.49. However, a minimum of 15 hours of CE as outlined in subdivisions, and I'm suggesting we add A and B. Right now, it just says subdivision A. It was overlooked. It is non-substantive. Do you accept that change?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to try for a motion. No.
Based on
You
what
can't laugh.
document?
Yes. Oh, wait, we
Since
need
the-
public comment, too.
Oh, yeah, since you're gonna have to do an F-SOR that summarizes these, that they're gonna approve, and you're gonna bring the language back even after it's noticed it's approved, do they really have to do a motion right now? They're gonna ultimately see the language in final format, and they're gonna get the responses in the F-SOR.
Do we really need a motion?
Other than to
Can we
say you
just
can
take what
notice
they-
it prior and then bring it back to us for final approval.
So after today, with the board's positions, it's going to bring it back to the board after revising the language?
Yeah, knowing what they accepted and rejected, or do we need a formal vote on what they accepted and rejected?
Because ultimately, you're going to see the final language,
Again.
and you're going to see the rejections and accepting of comments in the F-SOR.
Yeah.
Well, I
That
think
makes sense.
You're definitely going to need to take public comment. I think all it would be is just a quick motion to formal, so you're going to have to run through what these positions were.
You think so?
I think so. I mean,
Okay.
you're going to want public comment.
Okay.
on them.
Okay.
What document are you gonna off of?
We're gonna go off the cover of attachment item, agenda item 7. There's a motion there that hopefully we can stick to. But first, I need to run through all of these comments and summarize what we did. Bear with me. First of all, on the comments on page 4 of this cover document for agenda item 7, we went through all the non-substantive comments, which are numbered number 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 12. And the board did accept all of those comments. Then we turned our attention to the public comments by topic. And we will start at the beginning with comment 15 is rejected, 16 is rejected, 17 is rejected,
It says 8.
39. We are rejecting, but we will be adding communication. Number 40, we are rejecting. 41, we are rejecting. Number 3, we are accepting. Number 18, we are rejecting. Next page, number 13, we are rejecting. Number 14, we are rejecting. Number 19, we are accepting. As far as agreeing with the language, but we are rejecting that we need to add instructor-led skill days because we decided that the language already includes this and covers this. Comment number 39, we are rejecting specifically the introductory phase of live CEUs and the suggestion that we phase into requiring the live CEUs. Comment number 40, we're rejecting. 41, we're rejecting. 42, we are accepting. 43, we are rejecting. There's a staff note on there as well that you accepted to include A and B. The A and B, and later you also are, no, take it back, that's not accepted. So the only thing accepted is to add the non-substantive change of referencing A and B in that staff note. Comment number 20 was accepted. Comment number 11 was accepted. 22 was accepted. 21 was accepted. We are going to add, there's a note under comment 21 that the NBRC's Asthma Educator Specialist exam is now available, and the board has chosen to add that as a credential. Comment number 23 is accepted. 24 is accepted. 25 is accepted. 26 is accepted. 42 is rejected. 27 was accepted. Hey, it's gonna carry here. Organize that way. Number 7 was accepted. Number 28 was accepted. Number 29 was accepted. Number 35 was accepted. Number 30 was rejected with quite some explanation. 30, 31, and 32 were all rejected with new hours provided, though. Created good discussion. Number 33 was rejected. Number 41 was rejected. Number 34 was accepted. Number 10, God, I can't read my writing. Is that accepted?
9 and 10 were accepted.
Accepted. 35 was accepted. 36, 37, and 38 were all accepted. Now, do we ask for public comment? Motion first? Okay, is there anybody that wants to dare try to make this motion that's outlined here?
I'll make the motion, that's coming from Agenda 7 page.
Is your mic on?
What?
Is your mic on?
Yes.
Okay.
I move for the board to accept and/or reject comments as identified and authorize board staff to amend the language accordingly, including any other non-substantive changes, pursue the promulgation of the regulatory amendments. Period. Got that so far? Okay. Regardless of whether any further comments are received during the 15-day public notice, period. Board staff shall place the language and any comments received during the 15-day notice period on the agenda of the next board meeting for review and approval to proceed with the rulemaking and adoption of the amended proposed regulations. Are you ready?
Ready.
Phew. At sections 1399.349, 1399.350, 1399.350.5, 1399.351, 1399.352, 1399.352.5, 1399.352.7, 1399.381, and 1399.352.6 of Title 16 California Code of Regulations. And any other, well, that's to stop there, right?
That's it.
That's it. Regulations, period.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark.
This is, President, can I just ask a quick question? Alex, this refers to a 15-day public notice period. With the changes that were made, are we looking at 15 days or possibly 45?
I think that 15 would be sufficient in this case. So just for context to folks, if the changes were so fundamental that they like added a completely new section or changed fundamentally what this regulatory proposal was doing, we would be required to renotice it completely. But I don't think that they rise to that level. I think 15 days is sufficient.
Learned something new.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
So I think we just need public comment.
We invite public comments at this time. Wayne?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Technologically challenged. My name is Wayne Walls. I'm the president for the California Society for Respiratory Care. This section of regulations is daunting to make a lot of these changes, and I understand and appreciate the Respiratory Care Board's attempt, what they're trying to do to improve the profession, but most all safety to the patients that we treat. I know there's been a lot of controversy, a lot of back and forth on this matter, both by the RCPs of California, the CSRC, and I want to applaud the board for plowing through this as best you guys have done so far with this and trying to make improvements to this aspect. Message to the RCPs here in the state is that the CSRC is trying to also, in parallelism, trying to improve patient outcome and safety, along with enhancing our profession to make a stronger, more robust profession. So we appreciate the collaborative efforts of all the RCPs in California, the CSRC, and the Respiratory Care Board in this endeavor. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you, Wayne, for your comment. Any other comments from the public? Katie?
Hey, Spotto, is this on?
Yes.
I'm not sure what I can comment on. Can't, you'll have to stop me if I'm commenting inappropriately, but I do want to go back to the leadership. Can I do that? The definition of a leadership course? I can do that here. So you offered three different scenarios, and I just want to say with my experience being 32 years in leadership and management, I have to say that I learned, how to do a revenue and volume report, which is one thing you're recommending be taught under leadership, in one day. Financial reimbursement, took me a day or two to learn. But what I didn't learn, and which I wish I had been given more formal education or just a very good CEU lecture, was really on how important it is to be able to know how to walk in the shoes of my staff, which applies to emotional intelligence. I think that's very, very important, something that's so overlooked in our profession with our leaders. And I also want to also thank you for the communication. I think the listening skills, not only the fact that communication is the #1 safety alert that causes the most safety issues to the consumer. So I thank you for that. I would like to see us add at least emotional intelligence slash, which includes empathy, as a possible category for leadership. And I think our profession and our, particularly what respiratory therapists have been through in the last couple of years, it would be of big benefit for all the leaders. It would include them being better team leaders at the bedside, et cetera. So I would like to offer that comment. The other thing that I want to comment on is the fact that these live CEUs, even Ricardo mentioned that there's many acute care facilities that do not have educators. They simply have a director, and then they have their staff. And I'm aware of many of those certain hospitals, particularly Northern California. I'm not real. It is these individuals, these staff, first of all, they're very, very short-staffed. The individuals, the RTs that work for these departments are going to have a very, very hard time because they don't even get workshops. They don't get skills day. They have never had that opportunity. And so again, I'm just reiterating my comment that it's very important to have live CUs, and I agree with everything you say, except that we have hospitals that all of us, this is going to be a really emotional and physical burden because they need time to get ready, and I guess my question would be here is that when do these motions and these changes go into effect? When does that happen? When do all these changes?
If this proceeds as it's going to, it needs to be completed within about a year from when this started. So August 12th of next year, you could go 30 days beyond that. Otherwise, we start the whole process over again. And then the effective date would be thereafter. There's no, it's usually 30 days after it's approved.
So the effective date would be what?
Let's say September 12th.
Of 2023?
Yeah. I mean, but it's possible, it could change it. Go ahead, Alex.
Sorry, of course, the answer is quite a little bit more complicated. So the presumptive effective date of a regulation is, if it's not defined in the regulatory text itself, is dependent on when the Office of Administrative Law approves that final regulation. They work on a rolling quarterly basis based on when the final package is submitted to them. So there's a quarterly break point. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly when it is. So I guess to simplify it a little bit, if say the package were to be submitted in March of next year, if it comes before their filing break point, it would go into effect at the beginning of the following quarter. And if it comes after that filing break point, it would be delayed by another quarter. So to simplify it, if it doesn't state in the regulation, it becomes effective on a rolling quarterly basis when it's filed with the Secretary of State.
But regardless of when it is implemented, the RCP is not affected until the following renewal period, right? They won't be affected during that renewal period.
Right. I mean, we would pick the implementation day. We would want to make sure that everyone was informed completely with the whole 2-year cycle. We don't ever just
Right.
throw it in there. So you're right. It would be effective soon. Like, we'd probably make it January 1 to give us, we like to do that on the either July 1 or January 1, and give everybody 2 years' notice. And then after that renewal cycle, that's when that would be required.
Correct.
I think that's acceptable. I do. Thank you. And my final comment is on the actual CEU and the fact that, if I understand correctly, the Respiratory Care Board sets this, that it requires 50 minutes to get one CEU. What's going to happen is that when we do require these live CEUs, more than likely, there will be a lot of attention directed towards the webinars that are online that have active participation. What I can see is that I don't understand how you say that interactive, will add to more current knowledge. If you have a 50 CEU, 50-minute presentation, and you have 40 people online, 40 RTs online, that only gives them, what, maybe 5 to 10 minutes to interact. I'm not really, can wrap my head around how that is going to really improve their ability to gain current knowledge, because I think that's what the idea is behind Live CEUs, they're more current. So my only thing was that this was probably not possible, but that, these live interactive, that the CEU actually be, 40-minute content, and that there's actually, 20 minutes that the RT that's webbing in can discuss or ask or interact. Because I think just needs some attention there.
Thank you, Katie, for your comments.
Okay.
Anyone else? Yes.
Hello, Crystal Craddock, UC Davis Medical Center and adjunct faculty at Skyline Community College in the bachelor's degree program. I want to thank you all for getting through that today. That was a lot, and I heard a lot and learned a lot. One of the topics I wanted to make a comment on was the preceptorship. I think it's fantastic. I would, however, I just want to recommend that we consider hospital preceptorship of new hires or newer RTs being precepted in, say, the Children's Hospital. We spend several months on our new grads that come in, precepting them to specialty areas, especially those who may only have had rotations as a student in home care or pulmonary rehab or PFT, and then they come in to a hospital with that's a standalone children's hospital or a specialty burn center, trauma, and all of those things. I do think that it would be beneficial to include new hires and their the preceptors they have training them to be granted CEUs if they meet the qualifications. Thank you.
Interesting.
Thank you, Crystal.
That, I think, at a future date, when we revisit the CE, that we should make note of that and consider that. Also kind of plays in a little bit to a residency requirement.
Anyone else? Thank you all for being here, for your comments. I think we're ready to move to item number 8. Oh, I apologize.
Okay, we're ready. Mary Ellen Early. Aye. Ray Hernandez.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Sam Kabusha. Michael Terry.
Aye.
Vice President Goldstein.
Aye.
And President Guzman.
Aye. Now we're ready. To move to item number 8.
Before we go to item number 8, can I just make a comment?
Absolutely.
I just want to recognize the executive office for the work on this agenda item. Just made comments as we were on break, but, it's a daunting task to bring together the conversation that had ensued, the current feedback, and trying to organize it. And I think, I just want to recognize that it was an awesome job, even though it still was clunky, and we tried to get
really
through
nice.
it.
Thank you.
But I
Appreciate
think,
that.
but I think that, it was really helpful. Just want to make that acknowledgement. Thank you.
Thank you.
We all agree with that, for sure. Thank you, Ray, for pointing that out. When you're ready, Stephanie,
Oh,
we
here
can
we
move
go.
on to number 8.
Yeah, I'm ready. Agenda item 8. Oh, boy. So we had, as mentioned earlier, SB 1436 passed the legislature. It was a 2 or 3 decade attempt to get a resolution to the LVNs practicing respiratory care in skilled nursing facilities, a dangerous practice to the public. And so we finally got that legislation passed, and in that legislation, there were actually several different caveats. This regulation only impacts the basic respiratory care tasks that LVNs will be permitted to perform anywhere, in any location. I want to emphasize for the public and anyone watching that this does not include the task for home care. Home care will be addressed next year. We're going to start holding meetings. If you want to be included in those meetings, please make sure you sign up and get on our list on the website. Or you can email the office at rcbinfo@dca.ca.gov and asked to be put on the interested list, parties list for the home care regulations for LVNs to perform in home care. These do not address that. This is just what basic tax LVNs can do in any location. And so, as you know, the LVN board's law was changed to ensure that there is no authorization that LVNs can perform respiratory care. So that was placed in their law. Also in their law was a section that regardless of it saying that they can't practice respiratory care, they can practice any basic tasks and services that we say they can provide. And that's what this language is attached here. It's one page, and this is attachment 8. It's kind of funky because it was copied front to back. But it's page 1 of 1, and it's the second piece of paper on the back side. And those are the tasks. This is taken from a joint statement, primarily from a joint statement. So this started 3 decades ago, but the last major step was in a joint statement we had between the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians, our board. So it had our board president there, it had our attorneys there, it had experts there, and it had staff there. All these people came together and they formed a joint decision on what LVNs could and could not do. A few months later, the BVMPT backed out of that agreement. There was no formal back out, but we heard from the public that they had, and it was a little bit, we didn't understand what happened. So we went ahead in our sunset review report, and we gave the history of this and said we need help with the resolution on this. We've exhausted every resource we could on our own, and so they agreed with the language that we had submitted and said, yes, we will help you get this authorized, and that's where this came from. So I hope you've all had a very good chance to look at this, because this is very important. We are allowing LVNs to perform these and what they are not able to perform. Would you like to go over these in detail, or have you had a chance to look at these in detail? We're good?
I'm good.
Okay. So the motion I need today, we have an explanation with ISOR on there too, is on the front page. And if somebody could review that and see if they feel comfortable making that motion or any other appropriate motion for this language.
Okay. I make a motion, that I move for the board to approve the proposed regulatory text for sections 1399.365 as presented in attachment A. Direct staff to submit the text to the Director of Department of Consumer Affairs and to the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. And if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for hearing if requested. If no adverse comments are received during the 45-day comment period or during the public hearing, if requested, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking and adopt the proposed regulations at sections 1399.365 of Title 16 of the California Code of Regulations as noticed.
I second.
Any public comments on this item? See none. Christine?
Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Ray Hernandez,
Aye.
Dr. Lewis,
Aye.
Sam Kabusha,
Aye.
Michael Terry,
Aye.
Vice President Goldstein,
Aye.
and President Guzman.
Aye. Moving on to agenda number 9, election of officers.
Can I say one more comment?
Of course.
I just want to kind of give a shout out or applause to
Absolutely.
the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary, and vocational nursing and psychiatric technicians. The executive officer had reached out to me. And I just want to say I really enjoy working with her, even though we were at odds on this issue here at the end. We really do have a nice relationship, and I look forward to working with her on the home care section of this. I know she's very interested in that. That's it.
And we thank you and your staff for your efforts over the years dealing with this and finally coming to a conclusion that is beneficial for the patients, for sure. Thank you. So election of officers, we will begin with Vice President, and I'd like to nominate Mark Goldstein for Vice President. Do you accept that?
I do.
Are there any more nominations for Vice President? Okay, moving on to nominations for President.
I think we want to finish out that and then go on the.
Vote on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Christine?
Oh, no, I didn't get a second, or did,
Second.
okay. I will call the roll. Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Ray Hernandez,
Aye.
Dr. Lewis,
Aye.
Sam Kabusha,
Aye.
Michael Terry,
Aye.
Vice President Goldstein,
Aye.
and President Guzman.
Aye. Now we are looking for nominations for President.
I would like to nominate Ricardo Guzman for president.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Mary Ellen Early,
Aye.
Ray Hernandez,
Aye.
Dr. Lewis,
Aye.
Sam Kabusha,
Aye.
Michael Terry,
Aye.
Vice President Goldstein,
Aye.
and President Guzman.
Aye.
Normally, we would take public comment on each agenda item. We failed to do that on this one, so I would suggest maybe giving the public an opportunity, and if anyone makes any comments that change how any board members would have voted or the nominations, then we can revisit.
We welcome public comments at this time on this agenda item.
Again, I'm not that familiar with how nominations occur, but I make an observation that individuals on our respiratory care practitioners that are on the board here, that there seems to be missing the frontline worker, like representative of someone who actually clinically in practice. And I'm wondering why that happens. Maybe it's just that no one has time. They don't know.
I'm a bedside practitioner.
You do bedside care, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then very good. Very good, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 10, schedule 2023 board meeting dates and logistics.
So let me just throw out, for
Please.
February and March, we have some days circled. Are there any days that do not work for you? Or any preferred dates, so we can start with one?
And are we going to
So-
try to, again, the experiment of middle of the week versus end of the week? We did that once or twice.
Yeah, we have them circled, so are there any
Yeah.
dates there that are preferred or not preferred?
I personally like not weekend up against Friday, so they're fine to me in February, March.
I'm not available Mondays.
Not available Mondays, no Mondays? And that's for the whole calendar?
For between now and June.
Okay.
Between now and June.
So we are now looking at February 28th, March 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, although Dr. Lewis prefers not Friday. So how about,
Traveling, I prefer not.
does it anyone have a preference on the 28th, 1st, 2nd, 7th, 8th, 9th?
I would say the
I have
second
a
week of
preference for
March.
February.
Oh, I'm sorry, also, as related to traveling, we are recommending that this meeting be held teleconference, because legislatively, we
WebEx.
still have the, WebEx, I'm sorry, WebEx. We still have that ability until July the July
Yeah.
1st.
So I think I heard somebody, we were talking about March 7th, 8th, and 9th now. Do we have a preferred date or no preferred dates?
Ninth, eighth, ninth,
Does 9 work?
Thursdays, is it Thursday?
yeah.
Halfway to weekend?
9 Thursday? March 9th, going once,
Is that better for
going
you?
twice. We're gonna go with March 9th,
And that will be a WebEx meeting.
WebEx. May, June, we go by the same philosophy. We're looking at probably after Memorial Weekend, nobody really wants, so I'm gonna.
So
go
June is, are we planning to have this meeting at the CSRC?
Yes, thank you. They're having, they kind of penciled us in for June 22nd, that's a Thursday at 1 PM, but they were just trying to help. They weren't trying to tell us that's when we had it, but that would be in Temecula again, that's the plan. Would you like to do that on June 22nd,
Sure.
Sure.
to have it in connection with them? Okay.
So that's the well, it's not necessarily Temecula.
It's at the same
Oh,
location.
the Pachanga.
Yeah,
That's-
I think that's gonna be their
same
site
thing
for a
with
while.
the CSRC, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it was a nice participation, for sure.
Mhm.
And then October 19th or 26th, let's start with those. Unless you have another preferred date.
26th?
In October, I would prefer not a Wednesday or a Thursday.
Not a Wednesday or Thursday, so let's look at a Tuesday, 17th or the 24th?
Either one works for me.
24? 24? Okay,
Sounds
going
good.
once, going twice, the 24th. Do we need a motion for those dates? Okay.
June 22nd.
And Christine, question, so WebEx in March,
Correct.
live in June, and then for October, live?
As far as we know, because the legislative authority to continue with the WebEx meetings expires come July 1st. Unless there's a change.
And that would be,
Anticipated live.
Yes.
So we're gonna say Sacramento for now.
Sacramento.
We'll see how things go. So I guess we need a motion to hold the meetings on those dates and locations. I will repeat them and you can just refer to what I said. They are Thursday, March 9th via WebEx. Thursday, June 22nd in Temecula in connection with CSRC's conference. And Tuesday, October 24th in Sacramento, unless we get further authorization for a via WebEx, depending on what the conditions are at that time. Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion
Second.
And locations.
to hold a WebEx meeting on March 19, 2023, and then following the second meeting in June 22nd, 2023 at Temecula, in coordination with CSRC, and then the years in meeting in Sacramento on October 24, 2023.
It's March 9th. I think I heard you say 19th.
You say
No. March 19, please make a correction.
March
9th, I'm sorry.
9th.
Although I had circled the 19th.
Thank you.
that's it. Second, we have a second.
We had a second, now we're voting.
No.
Oh, comment.
Any public comments on this item?
We may have to get coverage on a conflict on this one. You guys are all
No comments? Christine, when you're ready.
Say it again?
Temecula. I've got something.
Oh, you may. Okay.
All right. Mary Ellen Erling.
Aye.
Ray Hernandez.
Aye.
Dr. Lewis.
Aye.
Sam Kalusha. Michael Terry.
Aye.
Vice President Goldstein.
Aye.
And President Guzman.
Aye. Moving on to item number 11, public comments. Public comment on items not on the agenda. Please note that the board is unable to take action on any items not listed on the agenda. The only action the board may take is to decide whether to place an item on a future agenda. Is there anyone in the public who would like to make a comment at this time? Please, Michael. We're allowing comments on items that are not on the agenda.
We don't discuss them, you make comment, right?
Correct.
Good morning, everyone. Again, Michael De Peralta, employee of Contra Costa Health Services and Kaiser Permanente Oakland Medical Center. I'm an Air Force veteran. This is in conjunction with my early comment, though not particularly related to SB 1237. I would like to have the board again stress the importance for future agenda items, the importance of providing waived fees for active duty folks. So we had the COVID-19 pandemic. We don't know, we may have a disaster, knock on the wood, at any time soon. And not providing state licensure with, free of charge. I'm stressing the free of charge because, young military folks who are respiratory care practitioners in all services do not make, that good amount of money as we do as a civilian respiratory care practitioner. We want to alleviate that stress from them so they could provide services when California needs them. We've seen that during COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen that gonna come in future disaster or pandemic. And I would like the board to, ask for the board to act on this on, a timely manner. So our military folks would have this opportunity to help, not only help during disaster or pandemic, but also this is helping them with affiliation from different medical centers throughout California. This is another hindrance for them because they don't have state of California. They cannot practice respiratory care. It affects their readiness for operations and readiness to assist when needed. So as you know, military medical centers do not cater necessarily trauma except the San Diego region, which they have the Naval Hospital in there. But majority of the military medical center in state of California do not have that trauma capability. That's why they have partnership with different trauma medical centers throughout California. Therefore, having them that opportunity to have a state of California, not only with education, but also to assist California when needed to. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Michael, for your comments.
Thank you.
Would you turn on the mic? Thank you.
As far as outcomes of these changes that are going to be made, is there, or I would like to see that there's some kind of quality assurance program that actually when you do give a preceptor course, that it does increase the quality of education for our students clinically, that there was that providing a leadership, requiring leadership does actually enhance the future leaders of our profession. It is very unfortunate that in the field of respiratory care that we are highly criticized for not having evidence-based practice. And I'd like to see the Respiratory Care Board have some kind of quality assurance program that validates that their changes actually result in positive outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie, for your comments. Anyone else?
Would like to go back on my comment because I disclosed my employer. I also would like to add that I am the CSRC and the ARC Military State Community Liaison, but I do not, all the views and opinions that I express are of my own, but also with the interests of our military brothers and sisters out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
I'm Mark Martinez. I'm the Northern California president for the CSRC. And I really just want to thank you for being encouraged. As being the president for the Northern California section, we have a very huge geographic area, and it is really hard to have educational events in those areas, be able to provide that to a lot of those areas. So the online portions and the educational opportunities that kind of like Ray was talking about, getting that engagement is really important. And so breaking down any of those barriers to that engagement, I think should be applauded. And, we have such a diverse state. We have the Inland Empire where you can have thousands and thousands of respiratory therapists in hospitals, whereas you go up north, you have Reading, or you have way in the very corner in Crescent City, you have a small hospital there. But we're going to try to encourage and increase the education opportunities in those areas. And thank you for removing any of those barriers and trying to allow us to have the flexibility to provide those education opportunities to those therapists that really do need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for your comments. Any other public comments? No? Thank you all for being here, taking time out of your busy day to engage with us. We appreciate it. Moving on to item 12, future agenda items. Does anyone have a future agenda item? No, we haven't done that yet.
Oh, that was public comment on items not on the agenda.
Oh,
Yeah.
now we
So-
have future agenda.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, sorry.
Ray?
Yeah, we haven't had a report in a bit just on the progression of legislation for baccalaureate degrees of the community college system, and there's been some updates to that. So I'd just like to have that on as a specific agenda item, and Michael and I will prepare something both, and I think it should be broader than just the community college baccalaureate.
In a closed session.
Okay, we're about to move into closed session. Again, thank you everyone for being here.